welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. It's Tuesday. It is a new year. We are back again. Welcome to 2025. Happy New Year to everybody out there. I'm Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company. We are back for some more Let's Talk Real Estate. We're going to do it again. I guess we'll call this season 4, if you will. It's hard to believe that this is our 151st show. I feel like we just started it not that long ago, and I'm excited to have one of our early guests back on the show to regroup and talk some more. Bill Shopoff, CEO of Shopoff Realty here in Orange County. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Barry. Good to be back here.
Yeah, always good to see you, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
And we got all kinds of things to talk about. It's a new year. I feel a bit refreshed. Got the holidays behind us, election behind us. We're going to try and look forward to a productive 2025. I want to rewind a little bit. Let's talk about some of the projects that you guys know at Shopoff Realty. I know you got your fingers into all kinds of different things, but I want to talk about some of the bigger, more prevalent projects that you have going on here in Orange County and elsewhere throughout Southern California.
Sure. Yeah, and look, I'm glad to be in 25.
Yeah, so
24 was a workout.
Right. So we're putting it behind us for many reasons.
Yep.
And onward and upward, as we say.
Yeah, no, it's a good time to be where we are, and we looked back on 24 and said it was a productive year. It wasn't necessarily a profitable year, but it was a productive year. But we think we set the tone for many years of good profits for our firm and for our partners. And we've got a good number of projects in the mix right now.
Yeah, and it's been challenging for folks in the real estate world and really everywhere, just with cost of living and rising costs of construction and rising interest rates and all those other fun things.
Yeah, look, we've dealt with pretty rapid rise in interest rates and now a little pullback. We'll see where that's going. Hopefully 25 has a few more cuts in store. But I think generally speaking, we've got to live with what we've got to live with. And for you and I, although we certainly enjoy lower interest rates, this is probably the median interest rate of our careers, given that we've seen some very high rates in our times. We learned to manage. It's the shift in rates. It's not the rate itself is the problem. It's when we have that shift in rates.
Well, combine that with perception, not only of the public, but perception from the financial world of either pullback or I want to lend or I'm more excited to lend, because the combination of the higher rate and then tighter lending restrictions is a double whammy, I think.
Yeah, well, we certainly saw on the commercial side and development side, financing picked up in late 24, availability of financing, number of lenders making quotes greatly accelerated toward the end of the year and set the tone for what we'll be able to do in the firm here in 25 and beyond.
And do you think to some of these financial institutions that you're well received and that there's a positive reception, or is there still an apprehension of, gee, really, do we really want to do this?
No, I think lenders are in business to lend again.
Yeah, I agree.
The pool may be somewhat smaller, but the ability and depth of capital it's sufficient to get transactions done today. Transaction volume, we haven't seen the final numbers for 2024 yet, but I think 24 was relatively flat over 23 when people were thinking it was going to be a pretty big rise in transaction volume.
And I think that applies really across the board, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, whether it's multifamily, just a general less volume of transactions going on.
Yeah, I think people expected interest rate cuts earlier in the year than occurred, and that would lead to more transaction volume. And I think just some of the anxiety around the election and, with that behind us and other things, I think we're well poised for a regrouping in 2025. We've got plenty of challenges, as we were talking about before. Operating costs are just, insurance is a big issue. Where I don't think either one of us really want to delve into that to the great detail.
No, it's a whole nother show.
Other than just to understand it's a higher...
And it's an uncontrollable cost, and there's no, I can shop around and get a better deal. There's just so few players out there.
Yeah, and the residents and the regulatory agencies think that we as landlords are getting some big bump in revenue and we should protect the resident. And I'm like, really? the biggest part of that bump is going to OPEX increases. It's not going
and when you talk about raising somebody's rent 3, 4, 5%, right? The days of I'm maxed out on rent control, residential rents have flattened, but your operating expenses are up 20, 30% or more in some instances.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all uncontrollable, whether it's the utilities or trash or insurance.
Salaries are up.
Yep.
The more
workers' comp.
The more we build new units, the deeper the demand for good quality operators.
There's also this pressure to deliver a quality product at somewhat of a reasonable price and still be able to make a buck or two.
Yeah, and if you're building new, there's no reasonable price.
Right.
Construction costs are what they are. They're significantly higher than they were 3 to 5 years ago. We are seeing, and we saw late in 24, and now we're super early in the year, but we are seeing some moderation in construction cost increases, and even in some projects, particularly in our logistics, our warehousing business, we're actually seeing prices drop, construction costs drop, which is good.
Because people are not as busy, so they're a little more hungry for the work, so you can get a little bit.
Subs are bidding a little more aggressively. Yeah. The generals are bidding at a lower fee margin because people are trying to stay busy.
But I find materials not so much.
No, I think concrete came in a little bit. We had some savings there, but some of the other things offset that. But we just signed a GMP before the end of the year on a little over 1 million square foot industrial building, and it came in, I'd say it came in 5 to 10% below our expectations. So that was nice.
So it's positive.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Westminster Mall, because I know that's a big project that you have. It's redevelopment, it's multifamily, it's multi-use, it's a lot of things. And a lot of people watch it. People have brought it up on other shows. They're waiting to see what you build and how you do it. And it's a high-profile kind of a project. Talk about what the general game plan is there and what your expectations are for timing.
Well, generally, we're trying to work with our neighboring owner because we think it needs to have a pretty holistic approach. And so I think we're close there to having some ideas to come up with a joint development plan. We've been working on site planning through the last part of last year. And I think one of the things is when we originally proposed on the part of the projects we owned, we proposed a pretty high percentage of for rent product in a fairly small amount of for sale. And we're switching that up right now.
Huh, interesting.
And the property will be holistically, the whole property, not just what we own, will be more single family for sale, high density, but more for sale product than rental on an amount of acreage. Unit count may be relatively close, but we think that the demand for that for sale product is very good, both on part of the home builders, but it's there on the part of the home builders because the buyer is there.
Right.
And so we think this will be a very high demand product for the home buyer. And so we're very excited to be part of that delivery system. We have Kaiser Permanente owns some land within the mall, and I think they've got a long-term plan to develop that out. And
is the city in your court in terms of good working relations?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with the city. City approved a specific plan. We're working through some issues that there's some tweaks always needed to the specific plan to make it function. But largely speaking, I think before the end of this year, that project will take shape before the public, where you'll see what we're coming up with. And I think it's a pretty vibrant project with hospitality. We'll have a couple of hotels on the site. We'll have some completely re-envisioned retail. Very little of the retail that's there will stay there, with the exception of Target. Target will remain. But the mall itself,
it's going to be a revitalization.
That's going to get demolished, and the whole place will have a refreshed and renewed look to it.
And it'll really be live and work and shop all in one place. Yeah. And then it'll be a destination for some of the surrounding areas as well.
It won't be as much retail as, say, Bellaterra down the street. Right. It's going to be more boutique retail, a lot of food, and really guide toward that. So
it's an exciting project. We'll look forward to it.
Yeah.
Is there a timeline for what you have at this point, or it's still in the planning stages?
I think we'll have a project approved here during 2025, site plan approval, and then begin actual development work. Conceptually late 25, but I think probably more realistically early 26 that will actually start affecting the plan.
It's exciting.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. It's been a great project for us. It's certainly everything takes its little twists and turns, but we're generally very happy of where we are with it.
And from a market segment standpoint, you still feel very strong about the multifamily market?
Yeah, I think long term we feel really good about the multifamily. In the short run, that's a hard product to go get construction loan on and build. We've got another one that will start this year in Fountain Valley, but I think the 26 start for some multifamily in Westminster is definitely on the horizon.
Yeah. Good. So let's talk about industrial a little bit, because I know that you're heavily involved with that as well. And that market, while it has been historically for the last however many years, really the hottest segment, the tightest markets in the country, I would say they still are, but cooled off a little bit from where they were a year or two ago.
Oh, it was so superheated. We saw rent growth essentially double in some parts of the Inland Empire in a couple of years. Yeah. That's clearly not sustainable for the tenant or really the market at all. But we are still seeing a demand for the large box user, which is largely folks that they're heavily involved in the e-commerce business, the Amazons of the world. But it's not just the Amazons, it's also the logistics firms, the third-party logistics firms that are involved, the 3PLs. But those companies are actively out seeking space. A couple of the domestic companies are in the market. Amazon signed several large leases during 2024, several million-foot plus buildings around the whole Southern California region, as well as in some other submarkets. We think that there's a long-term play here. There are definitely some short-term bumps in the road. The supply-demand gets pretty quickly out of balance or in balance, particularly with these large buildings. But the spigot of future million-footers,
so they're not a dime a dozen.
It's hard to get them entitled. It got much harder because of a bill that got passed through the state, AB 98. It restricts, you got to draw a radius around schools and parks and homes. And when you draw those radiuses, it doesn't leave a lot of land left.
You're in Beaumont and you're pushed further out.
Yeah, and even in some of those places, you're still finding that you're close to some of the sensitive receptors as they were defined in that bill. We feel very comfortable. We've got about a 10 million foot pipeline at the company in that I-10 corridor from Calamasa out to Desert Hot Springs.
Yeah.
And so we feel very good about that pipeline. And that stuff is all exempt from that bill. We're the last people to be able to, some of the last people, not the only ones, but some of the last to, we saw that legislation coming. We didn't know what it specifically would look like, but it had been in 3 or 4 legislative sessions in a row. Somebody was going to get something passed.
And so do you find that those areas that are out along that I-10 corridor that are pushing further east are the new Moreno Valley, if you will? I remember when Skechers went out there, everybody thought they were crazy. It was in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing around. And then, boom, you fast forward 10 or 15 years later, and the rent that they signed at 29 cents versus whatever the market is today, which could be 5 or 6 times that.
I would say that market is more than $1.35, probably in Moreno Valley. We're just under $1 out at Desert Hot Springs. That'll give you the range of where we see the world.
I bet you don't have a lot of competition in the sense that if I really need that amount of space and I really am a regional sort of trucking distribution company, I don't have to be near the port. I don't have to be where all the people are, and I can't be there anyway.
Yeah, you can't be, like, there's just not much more space available, certainly the large blocks of space in Orange County. There were a couple buildings built in the last several years. There was one built right next to our office building on Jamboree. Yeah. That's now leased up, got leased to Fletcher Jones. But, you know what, there's been a battle back and forth between residential land value and industrial land value. And today, residential land value is higher. In fact, we're closing on a transaction shortly for an existing, I'll call it, it's a sale leaseback of a large facility, somewhat industrial in nature. But our purchase is really designed to...
Long-term, it'll be residential.
Long-term, really in the short run, we'll have our tenant for 2 to 3 years, and then we'll demolish that building, and it'll be for sale residential on that site.
And I think that's a common theme of what I'm just going to call highest and best use, right? Yeah. The market should and will dictate what winds up getting built. Nobody's building office space. And in fact, you're seeing office space get converted into medical or quasi-medical space because that's a higher and better use and more demand.
You can either take it to that, or we have another building we're acquiring here in Orange County that's a straight office building. We've got short-term rentals, but at a reasonable cap rate. We're buying it, like call it an 8% cap rate on an office building. Whether I don't know if that's a good deal or a bad deal, but we're really buying it for the underlying land value.
Yeah, so you got the parking, you pick up extra land.
We'll actually demolish the building and put residential there. And so we see a fair amount of that. And I think what will happen is players like ourselves find these projects and demolish them. The overall supply gets better balanced on office, and the office market starts to see a slow recovery, because right now it's in a bit of a mess here in Orange County because rents are relatively low, vacancy rate's high, OPEX is high. There's not a lot of value to a lot of these buildings today.
Yeah.
But that'll balance, much like we saw in the retail, like buying something like Westminster Mall. We bought a retail center in Fullerton several years ago, and that got demolished in 2024, and it's going to be housing. In my opinion, that there was a lot of controversy about that project. Shouldn't have been, in my opinion. But what happened is we took a mediocre retail center, and we're going to turn it into a great housing project. And then the retail users that had to move go to another center and fill that center up, and they make that center more vibrant.
Right.
And so the net result is, but it's hard to tell the community because they want to get behind whatever some people just are opposed to change.
You have that dynamic, but then I think you also have the practical dynamic, which is if you're a broker or an owner looking to sell an office building in today's market, and you're not selling it to somebody who's looking at it as highest and best use and a different financial model, and I'm just looking at it as an office building, it's very difficult to make those deals stand on their own in pencil because there's no clear path for the office market, and nobody's excited to do financing on it.
Yeah, I tell people, I said, it's pretty hard to be an originator, a commercial originator, and decide to be bold enough to go into loan committee and say, hey guys, I got this great idea. Let's loan on some office buildings today. Because I don't think people really have a clear idea of what value is. So we can talk about loan to cost, but it's very hard to understand loan to value because I don't really know what value is. We're acquiring a building this year in another marketplace. But the whole premise is we got it with great financing, a lot of built-out space. We don't have to put a lot of tenant improvements in. And we can get our money back times two, even if all we did was operate the building for the rest of the loan term and gave the keys back.
But you bought that.
We bought it super right.
As opposed to in Southern California where everybody's on yesterday's dollar and wants yesterday's number and believes now that interest rates, if they're a little bit less, that should make my property worth more, and that those dynamics just don't hold, I don't think.
Even some of the trades that we saw last year, $125, $150 office buildings, I don't know whether I'm not sure that's still low enough.
Right.
And then you saw one, and I won't delve into it too deeply, but we saw a government agency make a big purchase. Yeah. I candidly don't understand their purchase. They, in my humble opinion, they overpaid, and I don't know why you would buy when you can rent cheaper now.
Yeah, it's really a challenge. And then there's still, I find, no clear path on the demand for office space. And while there is some demand, and you do have some companies that are bringing people more back to work, you still have leases that are rolling where people are trying to give back space or just right-size it. And so it's just an ongoing challenge, I think, especially in the high-rise A-class space where there's a lot of competition.
I think if your building's not unique, your space isn't unique, it's hard to convince your employees they've got to come back to work. I'll give a plug for the building we're in, and we don't own the building, so it's really easy to give a plug for it. But we office at the Boardwalk, and it was a project developed by Trammell Crow. Very thoughtful project, very kind of forward-thinking, and it's one that the building itself is good. Our space is really nice, but it's also how the building is run. During the holiday season, they do a tree lighting.
Right.
They bring the families out. The kids come out. Santa's there. Like, those are things that make people feel good about coming to the office. And I think that if your building isn't doing those things for you, it's hard to get very excited about showing up there.
I think it's a combination of that and the guy who's signing your check says, I need you here, or I'm going to still let you do what you want to do.
Yeah, we've taken we think people need to be in the office.
Yeah, I think you talk to most real estate companies, there's a synergy, there's deals, there's flow, there's interaction, and you should want to get out of the house. And
Yes.
if you're not that person, maybe you need to be in a different field or work for a different company.
Yeah, so it depends on the job, but most of our people are in the office most of the time.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think that's a common theme as well. It's just hard to staff up and bring on more overhead when you're struggling with controlling expenses.
Yeah. If I'm in town, I'm in my office.
So are other people, I assume, because they want to make sure you see them. I have that same issue. You're out of town, other people are, hey, can I work from home today?
No, that doesn't work either, because I got good managers that make sure they're there. But generally speaking, we think we're more productive as a firm as long as we're together.
And so do you think, I want to look at a little bigger picture with the little time we have left, but for 2025, are you actively seeing and looking at more deals going forward, do you expect, than you did in 2024? And will you be more active in taking deals down?
I think we'll be more active in projects that we've been working on, starting to go horizontal and vertical. We've probably got about $1.5 billion in construction starts over the next 18 months. That'll include industrial, multifamily, some hospitality, residential for sale. We've got some single-family build-for-rent product. So we're pretty active across the spectrum, but we also plan to be acquisitive this year. We'll buy more property, mostly development projects, pre-development sites. There'll be some more retail that we think is retail to residential, some more office to residential, looking for we like the infill kind of redevelopment, repurposing play.
Yeah.
That's probably where you're going to see us most active. We'll take a few more industrial sites if we can find those out in the Inland Empire or the low desert.
And still hot on Southern California in general, or are you looking at other ancillary markets going to other states?
We're in the Phoenix metro. We're in the Las Vegas market, but I'd say I'm still very bullish on California. In spite of all the headwinds that our government gives us,
right?
And you could do
it's another show.
We could do a series on that.
Yeah.
But in spite of that, I think the entrepreneurism in California, the spirit of being here. We talk about our climate, we talk about all the things, but I think it's not just that. It's our educational system, our higher educational system, the UC system, the private schools. There's a lot of bright talent coming out of those schools, and so we love to put it to work. And the other thing is, because they're so bright, they're also getting well paid, which means they can afford the high-priced housing costs that it takes here in Southern California. Look, I would have lost the bet if you told me that interest rates were going to double and house prices were going to increase.
Yeah.
But what happened was this anomaly of so many people had low interest mortgages locked in on their existing product that you really shut down the resale market, and the home builder picked up the slack in demand.
And that I'm going to trade up mentality or get a newer, bigger, nicer, different house goes by the wayside when you have a 2.5% mortgage, and if I have to retrade, I'm at 6 or 6.5, and so that slows down. And so I think that bodes well for entry-level home sales. Yeah. It bodes well for the apartment rental market, because there's not many people that say, I really am excited and really just want to buy. They're looking to just get into a nice place and fight another day.
Yeah, so we feel good over the overall supply demand here in Southern California, and really in California, because we're also in Northern California. We've got a pretty big position in the East Bay. So we generally feel good about things. We're never fully bullish because it's real estate. It's hard, but I think that 25 should be a great year for us.
And in terms of the overall economy and what's coming out of Washington or what's coming out of Sacramento, while those will all factor down, I think, to the overall economy and then ultimately to the real estate markets, what's the one biggest thing that you're watching? Is it inflation? Is it interest rates? Is it cost of goods and labor? Is it a combination of those things?
I think my biggest concern with the new administration is, did they really put in place the couple of things that they've said they would? tariffs, number one, and this mass deportation. If we have those two things, we'll have really crazy inflation. Because if you try to deport millions of people, we have to go backfill those jobs. And that's going to be wage inflation, substantial wage inflation. Because roughly, I just saw a stat the other day, 18 to 20% of like food production, picking food.
Yeah, farming.
That's immigrant labor. About 18% of construction is immigrant labor. If we take 20% of the labor pool out of any business, you have to have inflation to fill that. And tariffs are inflationary. Yes, we can get away with some spot stuff. I'm literally getting a quote from somebody on some equipment for a hotel we're building in Las Vegas. And they were like, we have to see where, tariffs are going to land and how we quote this product for you.
And I think time will tell. Trump will get into office. We'll see what happens. He says he's going to act quickly. I think the first 90 days of what's going on is going to tell a lot.
We're going to get a clear direction. He comes in as a lame duck president because he can't run again. He's got about 2 years of runway, maybe 18 months.
That's what I say.
I think it's 18 months because
I got to go quick.
He's got to put good policy in place to either hold the House or get what he can get in the first 18 months. And I think if history's forecast, with a thin margin in the House, it's probably unlikely they hold the House, that the Democrats take back control of the House at the midterms. So they've got a year and a half to get some things done. But that's a long time with all three branches of government.
And I think he's got to get something going quickly, which he says he wants to. And then the better he does at that, I think, then the more people calm down, assuming the economy is chugging along and doing okay.
Look, I said he can go from having a fairly challenged reputation because you either love the man or you don't love him.
There's no in the middle.
There's nobody in the middle on this one. But he could actually go from that to having a really spectacular legacy if he focuses on good policy coming out of the chute. And I'm cautiously optimistic.
And I say, look, whether you love him or whether you hate him, what's good for America and what's good for the economy is good for the average person at the end of the day.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
So.
With all of that said, we're out of time. Paul's waving at me. We're done. I do appreciate you always coming and sharing your thoughts, and you got some exciting stuff on the horizon in the near future. I wish you and your family and your business great success in the coming year. And I appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks, Barry. Good to see you again.
Yeah, Bill, great to have you. So for everybody else out there, we're going to be back here again next week. We'll talk some more real estate. I'm Barry Saywitz. Great thanks to everybody here at OC Talk Radio for helping to put the show on again. We'll see you back here next week on Let's Talk Real Estate.
There you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.